Have you ever put on a piece of modern classical music and just thought, what on earth is going on here? If so, you are definitely not alone. The 20th century was, to put it mildly, a wild ride for music. It was a time when composers didn't just write new songs, they completely rewrote the rulebook. So let's dive into this incredible century of sonic rebellion.
Right, so this is the big question, isn't it? Why did music go from the beautiful, kind of predictable harmonies of the 1800s to sounds that were often jarring, chaotic, or, well, even random? The thing is, the answer isn't just about music. It's about a world that was changing in every way imaginable.
You have to picture it, the turn of the 20th century. Technology, art, society, everything was exploding with new ideas. So it just makes sense that music, which is always a mirror of its time, would get swept up in this whirlwind of change and start asking some really new and, yes, some really strange questions.
And a massive piece of this puzzle was technology. I mean, for the first time in human history, you didn't have to be in a fancy concert hall to hear an orchestra. Thanks to gramophones, radios, and records, music was suddenly everywhere. And that meant new radical ideas could spread like wildfire, giving composers this whole new universe of sound to play with.
So the first big break from tradition wasn't some violent explosion, it was actually more of a beautiful, blurry smudge. This was Impressionism, a movement that was way more interested in creating a mood than it was in following the old, stuffy rules of composition.
The best way to think about it is to picture an Impressionist painting, maybe by Monet. You know how the edges are soft, the light is kind of hazy, and it's all about capturing a feeling, a fleeting moment? That is exactly what these composers were doing with sound. They weren't trying to tell you a clear story, they were painting you a picture with music.
So how did they get that dreamy sound? Well, by bending the rules, of course. They'd use rhythms that just flowed, not locked into a strict beat. They also use these lush, new kinds of chords, like ninth chords, that sound kind of hazy and unfinished. You know that satisfying thud when a song ends? Impressionism just kind of floats, leaving you hanging in this shimmering, mysterious mood. And the undisputed master of this was the French composer Claude Debussy. He was famously fed up with the rigid traditions of classical music and just wanted to break free. And you can totally hear it. When you listen to his piece, Clair de Lune, it doesn't really feel like a song with a beginning, middle, and end. It feels more like you're just wandering through a moonlit dream.
Okay, so if Impressionism was like a dreamy gaze looking outward at the world, the next big thing was a raw, unfiltered scream coming from deep inside. This was Expressionism, and this was music that was not afraid to sound ugly. Because let's face it, our emotions aren't always pretty. Kicking off in Germany, Expressionism just dove headfirst into the human psyche. We're talking about music that wanted to express intense internal feelings, anxiety, fear, even madness, with zero sugarcoating. This stuff was designed to be unsettling because the emotions it was exploring were, unsettling. But how do you actually write the sound of pure anxiety? Well, you use some truly radical techniques. The biggest one was something called atonality. See, most music you've ever heard has a home base note that it always wants to return to. Atonal music gets rid of that completely, which leaves you, the listener, feeling constantly tense and a little lost. Composers also threw in tons of dissonance, notes that just clash horribly against each other. They even came up with a vocal style called Sprechstimme, which is this really creepy sound that's not quite singing and not quite speaking, it's eerie. The main guy here is Arnold Schoenberg. This man was so determined to break free from the old rules that he invented a whole new system just to do it, the 12-tone technique. It was basically a mathematical way to make sure no single note got to be more important than any other, creating this sense of total harmonic freedom, or, chaos, depending on who you ask. And this really nails the difference, right? Impressionism was all about capturing an outer world, like a sunset on the water. Expressionism was all about expressing an inner world, like a panic attack. One gently bent the rules to create a mood, the other just shattered them to get at a raw feeling. But the rebellion didn't stop with just breaking the rules. Pretty soon, composers started asking a much, much bigger question. What even is music? And do we actually need any rules at all? This simple but totally revolutionary idea comes from Edgard Varese. His argument was that music isn't just notes played on violins and pianos. No, music is any sound as long as a composer organizes it. A car horn, a factory whistle, the beep from your microwave. If you arrange it with intent, congratulations, that's music. And that philosophy blew the doors wide open for electronic music.
Varese is basically the father of the whole thing because he imagined a world where technology could create sounds that no traditional instrument ever could. Composers could now record literally any sound in the world, then speed it up, play it backwards, and twist it into something completely new. But what if you took it even one step further? What if the composer just removed themselves from the process altogether? Now that is the mind-bending idea behind chance music. And the name comes from alea, the Latin word for dice, because the process is literally like rolling the dice to see what note comes next.
And this wasn't just making random noise. It was about creating a system. So you could, for example, take the numbers from a phone book, assign each number a different musical note, and boom, the phone book just wrote a song for you. The composer creates the rules of the game, but chance gets to play. The pioneer of this whole way of thinking was John Cage. And for him, the goal was deeply philosophical. He wanted to get his own ego, his own personal tastes and preferences out of his art. He used things like coin flips and dice rolls because he wanted to create something that was free from the artist's control, to let the universe, in a way, write the music itself. So after all that, where did this century of rebellion leave us? Well, we went from composers gently bending the rules to violently breaking them to finally just throwing the entire rulebook out the window and asking if we ever needed it in the first place. You can really see the acceleration here. What started as just tweaking the rules a little bit for artistic effect very quickly escalated into shattering them for emotional impact. And by the middle of the century, composers weren't just changing the music anymore, they were changing the very definition of what the word music could even mean.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating question today, doesn't it? The true legacy of the 20th century wasn't just a bunch of strange songs. It was this permanent expansion of what we even consider to be art. So if organized sound is music, and that organization can come from a computer or even just random chance, what's the limit? What can't be music? It's definitely something to think about the next time you hear a sound that really challenges you.